At a certain point, you kind of have to go, well, maybe some of this shit's real.
We've all got it. Like, we're all energy. We all have the ability at some level to tap in, to turn on that information. All of those things are in all of us.
Hello and welcome to The Secret of My Success, where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Currin. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please give it a like. That way more people can hear this fantastic content. So, on today's episode, I am speaking with an amazing person that I actually met through Facebook. If you are curious about energy or magic, then you need to meet Elizabeth Eleanor. For 26 years, she has been on a magical journey of spiritual discovery, and she has been building an intimate relationship with her higher self and her guidance. From 3 shooting stars when she asked for confirmation of her path to the attracting of the love of her life in a fairy tale encounter, Elizabeth's journey has been full of unusual encounters and miracles. Please help me in welcoming Elizabeth. Okay, awesome. Today I am speaking with Elizabeth Makepeace. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's such a fun, exciting time for us to be together, Erin. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm saying, so you and I connected through a podcast group on Facebook, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I am just so excited to be talking with you today because, like, what little bit I know of you, you have just been just effervescent and joyful, and it's been a pleasure, like, during all of the conversations we've had so far. So I can't wait to see what we create today.
It's going to be cool. We've already connected, right? So it's going to be fun.
Definitely. So, where we normally get started with the podcast is I ask you to share a point in your life, whether it's a turning point or a paradigm shift, where you went from thinking one way to thinking another that got you to where you are.
I've had so many of those in different, like as you level up and develop spiritually and personally and all of those things, uh, it's it's a continuous, isn't it? It's a continuous movement forward. And when you also go into the space of not knowing, allowing your curiosity just to come through and whatever is appropriate and stay in your innocence, then that gives you even more of those moments. So,
Mm.
really, the very first one that made a huge change for me is something that most people would say would be a trauma, is when my dad died at 15. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I didn't know I was awake, and I wasn't awake, but I had this thing. Like, my dad was on a kidney machine growing up, so he was always on dialysis 3 days a week. And I used to lay next to him, and every so often I'd go into this, oh, I don't want you to die, and have a big cry with him. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to die. But sure enough, when I was 15, he passed away when I was at school. And so it was really a bizarre experience for me because, one, I knew, like, they came to get me at school, and they were told by my family, don't tell her until we get there. But the teacher walked in and I said, he's dead, isn't he? Like, I just knew somehow. And after that, I had this thing that he was in a library somewhere, which was very bizarre because my auntie was Christian. There was no one spiritual in my family. There was only Christianity or non-Christian, right? So my family weren't, but my auntie were. And so I'm like, is there a library in heaven? Like, why am I having this feeling that he's in a library somewhere? So it caused me to start questioning life, God, heaven, what's this all about? And I went searching, but I did that through total dysfunction to start with, because dad was everything. Like my mum was working all the time because she had to look after the family, and dad was sick. So dad raised me. We looked after the house together. We cooked, we cleaned, we did everything together. And so when he passed, it was like, oh, is that my mum? I don't know if I like her. And bang, I was out of there. And went, fell in love with a guy from school, and we spent 10 years smoking pot and doing crazy stuff. And he turned into an alcoholic, and it took me years later, once I had kids and I moved away from that life, I cleaned up and became an adult. It took me years later to realize, oh wow, that was 10 years of grieving, and I didn't even realize it. But through that process was me looking, and that self-discovery of what's out there, who am I in the big scheme of things, where did my dad go, why do I feel like he's in a library? And so that switch, I was seeking and numbing myself at the same time. So it was a long process. But once I left that process and I cleaned up from, numbing myself and realizing that I didn't have to be in an abusive relationship, that I was worth more than that, and I left. That's when I spiritually had some massive shifts, that time collapsed, and big energetic energy downloads from the universe, and things like 3 shooting stars and all sorts of crazy stuff that started to happen after that.
Wow.
It's a
That
big
is
thing,
something.
right?
It really is. Fortunately, I think most of us really don't understand what that experience is like. My 2 half sisters do.
Mm.
Their mother, my stepmother, passed away when one was 19 and the other was 15, and it was cancer, uh, uterine cancer, I think. And so it's a very unique experience because that's such a tender age. Like you're in this space where you're trying to become who you are and really vulnerable and exploring, and you want to be rebellious, but at the same time you're dealing with this major life issue that like adults have trouble dealing with, especially in our Western world where we don't talk about death.
No.
Like we don't talk about what's going to happen. Your dad saying, "Oh, I'm not going to die." Like you already, like, why are you lying about it? And
Yeah.
it's not that it was anything that was intentionally done to hurt. It's I don't want to talk about that right now because I don't have a belief system around what happens and I don't want to scare you, kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now I understand that it was a contract that we had for me to start exploring and becoming sovereign, because I know that if he hadn't have passed then, just the conditions that we were living in with mum, who was quite narcissistic, uh, I was heading down. I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to look after you. I was constantly talking to him about, like, let's leave mum, like this is not a good situation, and I'll move in with you. My life, if he had stayed, would have been very different
Mm.
and not spiritual at all. And I see the path, and I know that, because I, actually, funnily enough, uh, when I spiritually woke up, it was because of dad again. Yeah, I'll quickly tell that story. I left my partner, moved away, became a massage therapist, moved to far north Queensland because I live in Australia. So I lived up in the tropics. And a friend of mine was like hassling me to go and see this psychic, and I didn't believe in them. It was like, they're charlatans, just want to take my money, lie, blah, 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 blah. And so, but she kept on insisting, oh, you'll get to speak to your dad because I spoke to blah, blah, blah. And so I ended up going just to shut her up. And, I walk into this woman's house. She puts me into this room, walks out and comes back in. She goes, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I've gone into the wrong house. What's going on? And she said, you can do what I do, but obviously you don't know it. And I'm like, oh, here we go. This is her spiel to everyone. But as I'm sitting there and she's telling me things that she shouldn't have known and all the things, I'm writing something down on a piece of paper and I feel this brush on my face. And I looked up and she said, oh, did you feel that? I said, yeah, what was that? And she said, that was your dad. He wants you to really listen to what I'm saying because it's really important. And so through that process, we finish the session, I go home, and for 3 days I've got things touching me, like turning around, there's nothing there. And, I ring her back up and I'm like, what's going on? And she said, oh, they're just happy you've woken up and it'll settle down, it'll be okay. So I said, well, can I book in again? And she said, no.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I thought that she wanted my money. I thought that she, now I see how authentic she was. But at the time I was like, that's crazy. I didn't know anyone spiritual. I had no idea what was going on. And I was blind and had to, go on my own path, which was a beautiful journey because then I had to rely on myself rather than somebody else outside of myself telling me how to do it. So
Really
yeah,
powerful.
it was my
Super
dad,
scary,
full
though.
circle. It was, it was. And the weird things that would happen, because all of a sudden now you're connected to this force that's invisible, but doing stuff to support your questions, I remember this one time I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? It's weird, what do I make of this? And I was walking through a shopping center and went past a health food shop and they had a table out the front full of all these different books that were on discount. And I'd gone up and looked, and there was nothing there that caught my eye. Went past, did my shopping, walked back, and someone had stacked all of them up into like a pyramid. And it was a big table. Like it would have had 60, 70 books on it. Stacked them all up, and right on the top was this one book that said, with a little help from my friends. And it had
Oh,
spirits on the front. And that was one of the first books that I read that gave me an understanding of what was going on.
oh, that's awesome.
Mm.
Well, there are no mistakes in the universe. There never are. You get exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. So how how did that book help? Like you're walking past, the books are one way, you come back through, there's this pyramid with this book on top that's meant specifically for you.
Yeah.
You like, nobody's pointing to it going, hey, Elizabeth, you should really read this.
This is the
You just
one.
look at it and it's like you just can't help but grab it, right?
Yeah.
So what was the message in the book?
The message was that there is more than us, that we are connected to a higher force, and that there are individuations of that higher force that we would call spirits, and that those spirits can turn up and be present as loved ones that have passed, or guides, or whatever. Like they give us messages, and that those messages can support us to move in the direction of evolution of our own personal soul journey. It actually guided me to start going to a meditation course at a spiritual center that I found,
Hmm.
and through that, I met a guy that took me on a bit of a journey. Like he was into anthropology and all sorts of crazy stuff, um, blowing my mind because it was all beyond me at the time. He made these things called harmonic accumulators. They were amazing. He had this mathematical way of putting these sacred geometry, 3D sacred geometry, like five-star pointed stars, and like circles that had the flower of life in them, and you just have them hanging in your house or whatever, and they just move just because of their frequency.
Oh,
he
wow.
he yeah, he was quite an amazing man, but he wanted me to go to this workshop that I thought was like way beyond. I had no idea what they were talking about. So I kept on, saying no, but finally we went. But by the time we got there, I'd realized, so this is months later, I'd realized he thought that we were going to end up together, and I was not interested. So when we walked into this workshop, the woman who ended up being my mentor said that she had put the workshop on because she had been told by spirit that there was going to be someone that was going to come into her life, and she put the workshop on, and everyone that turned up, she knew, because we turned up late. So then we walk in, and she said, as soon as I saw you, I knew that it was you. She said, but it was so hilarious. You both sat down, and the whole time you're sitting there going, I'm not with him, I'm not with him. And he's sitting there going, I'm with her, I'm with her. And she said it was just hilarious, right? Well, that took me on the start of a journey of 7 years of past life regression training. And
Wow.
yeah, so 7 years I'm in this woman's book, and, just really deep dive into the psyche, into the, past lives. And then I became a facilitator, and left that group after 7 years. So that was the start of my spiritual journey. Like, talk about, okay, now you've woken up, we're just going to smack you in here, and just almost like the Matrix, right? Neo with the download, like it was
It's like
quite
you wake
bizarre.
up and you're in a puddle of goo and you're like, wait a minute, like I'm
Yeah.
bald and I'm naked and I'm full of cables. Like, how is this? How is this
Yes.
happening?
Yeah. Oh, you can imagine. It was absolutely crazy. And I didn't believe in it most of the time.
Yeah.
Like the whole way through that we were doing these regressions, um, I didn't believe in it. And I think that that's one of the reasons why she liked, like, what I was channeling and what was coming through for me, was because my innocence just let it come out. And,
Yeah.
some crazy stuff happened, releasing lots of, personal vibrations that no longer served, but then, information that would, help her book and her mission as well. So,
I can imagine that she probably dealt with a lot of people who would give false positives, people
mm,
who were just like telling stories for the sake of wanting to be loved or to look smart or to to appear more plugged in because it's like I went to a Joe Dispenza retreat back in September and I met someone who like this is gonna sound bad. She's from India, so it's almost like the stereotypical guru. She didn't even know who Joe Dispenza was before she showed up to the retreat, and she had a ball. And we connected on like the second day and like fast friends. And we're talking on the phone sometimes and she feels like she's so way up there and I'm like, "Why are we friends? I feel like so I'm like the biker bar spiritual. Like I don't belong here. I'm the misfit. I'm, like the profanity and and it's like I don't know why you guys think that I have this thing, but it just keeps pursuing me. And so,
Mm.
at a certain point, you kind of have to go, well, maybe some of this shit's real. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that when you have that, healthy skepticism, it's it's why you're innocent. Like it keeps you open and curious, right? Which gives you the opportunity for more information and download. And, like sometimes that curiosity can then go into discerning it or judging it and then making assumptions of it, and that's when you've got people trying to please or whatever, and be the guru or be the higher than thou or whatever, and that was one of my challenges, because and one of the reasons, the mission that I'm on, because when I walked into this experience, I had the same. Like I walked in and like women saying, "Oh, we're Syrian sisters." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, what?
what?
Yeah, oh, yeah. And just, like all these things, and people knew about Atlantis, and they had this guide next to them that's a Native American Indian called George, like they talk to him all the time, and huh? No idea. Right. But then I get to this point, like something changed, and it was a few years, but something changed when I realized what I was doing naturally, which is what you're saying, right? What was happening naturally, just my inner knowing, my awareness, like my following the path, like the things that were just happening naturally was actually what they were talking about, but it was a different language.
Hmm.
And when I worked that out, I was on a bit of a mission, because I was pissed off. It was like, you're making it sound like it's something different, so that the average person feels like they are limited and not good enough. But when,
Ah,
yeah, we've all got it. Like we're all energy.
right.
We all have the ability at some level to tap in, to tune in, to turn on that information, to recognize that the thoughts that we're having may not necessarily be just our thoughts, that we might be getting guided. All of those things are in all of us. None of us are special. Some of us have been able to focus on it more and tune the skill, like a chef or a mechanic, or, having two languages, learning a new language. We all have the ability, as whether you focus on it or not. And
Mm.
that was one of the things that was a big thing for me when I realized, oh, what I'm doing naturally is what they're actually talking about. I was on a mission. You have this too. You can do this too. You have the ability. It's whether you want to focus on it, it's whether you want to fine tune it, it's whether you want to do the depths of the soul, which is, it's not an easy ride, right? You can stay in
Not at
ignorance
all.
and, and play the game, or you can, like as Neo, right? We were talking about before. It's like you take that pill and you end up in, what's that place that they go to, is
Zion? I
Zion.
think it's,
Zion.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not all rainbows and unicorns there, right?
No,
It's
it's
yeah.
it's metal and it's goo and it's cold and it's, yeah. Well, and that really brings out a point because one of the things that I was thinking about earlier, we were talking about if you don't really understand that you have this gift. If you, like, people say, oh, everybody's a little psychic, or everybody, is magic, or it's the law of attraction. If you just focus on it and focus your energy, it's like, bullshit. I don't just sit in a chair and pretend to drive a Ferrari and then it's going to be outside tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely a proponent of like I've been practicing Buddhism for 24 years, and the principles are very similar to this as well. Yes, magic is real, but no, magic isn't what most people think it is, and you probably can speak to this much better than I can. It's not like most people, Westerners, think that magic is I get something for nothing. And I think that that's one of the reasons why most people don't believe in magic, because it's never something for nothing. You're always giving some sort of an exchange. There's always a trade off, whether it's building your energy or fine tuning your receptivity. Because when you were talking about being open to the path, there's also the side of the skeptic that
Mm.
has the foot nailed to the floor because I'm refusing to believe that I could be that because I'm broken, you don't know me. And so I think there's a dynamic on both sides.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I am the only one who is responsible for what I do with, like, if you imagine you're sitting at a poker table and the guy deals the cards, I'm responsible for what I do with the hand.
Yes. Yes,
I
absolutely.
start with what I start, I get what I get, and then some hands are just going to lose and some hands are just going to win. And then there's everything else in the middle.
Mm. Absolutely. And it's I totally agree because the movie The Secret, just before that came out, I had my own experience of shifting energy. And when that movie came out, it was like, for those that were on a spiritual path, it was like, oh, is that really, like, yes, it's in mainstream, so that's exciting, but is that really benefiting people to recognize their ability to create? Because again, as you said, like, people think that magic means, laying in bed and, Ferrari's going to come, and not putting any effort in. And so that's not to say that miracles don't happen, right? Because they do. But we are engaged in our creations. It's part, like, it's reciprocal energy. We are co-creating, or we are the universe, right? We are the master, we are the creator. So when we can recognize ourselves as the creator has to work with the masculine and the feminine, because we do live in duality, right? And so that means receiving the information and taking action on the information that you're given. But magic is such a heavy word, isn't it? It's such a heavy word because so many people have so many different connotations around what magic is. I've got a friend that is a fitness witch, right? She does fitness witchcraft. It's beautiful. Like, she's amazing at what she does, but she does spells and talks to deities and all of those things. And it's not my scene, right?
Yeah.
But I believe in magic, and I speak about magic a lot, because magic to me is owning your creation, owning your magnificence, owning your authenticity, owning that you are here creating your
Mm-hmm.
own reality. And so here's the guy putting out the cards and taking note that those cards, before you even flip them over, that you and your vibration have something to do with what cards came out of his hand,
Mm-hmm.
because you are creating your world, right? And this has been predominant creator, because we are all individual, but having a physical experience as a whole as well.
Yeah.
So as that person has put those cards out, I know that whatever cards they are cards that my higher self and my vibration right now have orchestrated to have in my life, so that when I flip those cards over, I can then look at those cards and go, this is what I've been handed. This is what my life is a reflection of.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I going to do with these cards? How am I going to respond to them? Am I going to get angry and abusive and blame the cards for the way my life turned out? Am I going to take full responsibility, and then blame myself that I'm a victim and there's nothing I can do because this is the way it is? Or am I going to see those cards and go, okay, these are the cards that I've been handed, and be neutral to them and play them in a way that benefits myself and others, so that I'm elevating myself and the environment that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
to create the heaven on earth that I want to choose, because that's my desire.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an experience earlier today, and in Buddhism, one of the things I talk about, and I was sharing this with you before we got on, one of the core tenets of Nichiren Buddhism is the environment is a reflection of the self. So if it's in your space, if it's in your face, it's in your space, right? In some way, shape, or form. There are no mistakes. The world is attractive, not repulsive. And so, however I'm vibrating, however I'm thinking, whatever I'm focusing on is going to predominantly be my experience. And I was sharing with you that I'm in the process of moving into a new space, and I'm looking, well, I was really excited because it took me weeks to find the right space. I was about to settle probably 3 different times, and each time it fell through at the last minute because I would sit down and I would chant, or I would journal, or I would focus, and I would get really clear because the frantic Erin was the one doing the searching. And then the spiritual Erin was, like when it was just about time to pull the trigger, going, okay, let's take a step back and take a look at this. And it's magic how it kind of all falls apart, and then the right one shows up at exactly the right time. So for the last couple of weeks I've been super excited, but don't want to talk about it because I don't want to jinx it. It's too early, the condo board hasn't approved me yet, la 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 la. Well, we're getting down to the wire. I've got 1 week left to get out of the place where I am. Hadn't heard from the condo board. Yesterday, I was like, I'm not going to bother my realtor. This morning, I'm like, I got to do something. I gotta figure this out because there are like literally 3 business days before everything is supposed to happen. And I was supposed to go to somebody's house to chant. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I got too much to do. No, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to go, you need to chant. And as I'm chanting, I'm starting to realize how I'm putting the fear, the doubt, the concern into the space. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it because it's not really done. Wait a minute. If you really believe that you're on the right path, then where's the doubt coming from? Are you decided that this is it? Are you decided that this is done? Fantastic. Sit your butt down and chant. Focus that energy toward that goal
Mm.
as if it's done. And it, like, from the beginning of the hour to the end of the hour was a completely different experience. And 2 hours after I left that my friend's house, the board calls. And it's like, that's weird. You focus the energy, you decide to shift. And I've had the experience where I would, like, when I was working at the last company I worked at, I would walk in the door and swear that people were avoiding me, and then I would try a little experiment after a couple of hours of just being like, "Rah." And I'll go, you know what? I've heard people say that you can shift an entire environment just by shifting your way of being. And so sit, clear my space, breathe a little bit, meditate, do whatever I need to do. And the next thing I know, everyone in the office is different.
Mm.
And that's real. Like,
Mm.
I couldn't explain it. And like the skeptic of me is going, bullshit. Somebody passed around a bottle of wine, something happened, like, they were happy that you were behind closed doors for the last couple of hours, like, something. But at the same time, like the coincidental nature can't be ignored. So what do you recommend people to do if they're in a particular path, their life is going a certain way, they've been doing this way for their entire life or for a very long time at least? How do you begin to get access to the magic, to creating that new conversation?
That's a really good question, because we have, as a premise, right, we have three different levels of consciousness. We've got our conscious that's talking right now, that's, you know, active and being present and in the now moment and making decisions and judgments and discernments and, how we're going to talk and all of those things, tick, tick, tick in the background. Then we've got our unconscious that is a whole pattern of behavior from our past. And our unconscious is like the robotic side of us that keeps us safe, because when we were born, actually, they say that the unconscious starts developing in the last quarter of gestation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But especially up to 0 to 3, 0 to 7, 0 to 3, we're in a brainwave frequency that's the same as being hypnotized. And so we are no reasoning, just letting everything come in without any filters. So we are our environment, and our environment is downloading, if we're going to go back to the matrix sort of stuff, right? So programming us of how to be in the world, right? So we've been a spirit, we come into this body, we get birthed, and now we're here, and we've got an external environment, because before we didn't. Now we've got to, cry to get our nappy changed, and to be warm, and to be fed, and to be safe, and all of those things. We've got to externalize, and how do I have to behave to get my needs met? And so we learn that if I behave this way in this family, because every family is different, then this is how I get my needs met, right? And if I behave this way, then I don't get my needs met, and something traumatic happens, or I get neglected, or whatever happens, right? And so we learn a behavior, and that behavior then locks in to our neural pathways, so that it becomes our subconscious patterning, and we make assessments and judgments of who we are in that. So if we get told too many times as a child, don't do that, you're a bad boy or girl, go to your room, whatever, we start going into, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm insignificant, whatever it is that you locked in. And now it's locked in this inner child that's like, this is who I am, and this is how I have to behave. And so that inner child and unconscious has got no idea that we're now adults, right? So when your conscious is going, well, I want a new condo, or I want to change the environment, or I want to do whatever, if your unconscious doesn't believe that you have the ability to do it, and most of the time it doesn't, if you're not spiritually waking up, or haven't been exposed to some form of self revelation that you are more than this body, then your unconscious is running the show pretty much 90 odd, 95%, 98% of the time. we have another level of consciousness that I call the superconscious, but you could say it's a higher self, it's, all that is, spirit, God, whatever your language is, that has access to, or is all of everything. It has access to all information, all codes, all realities. And there's so many different versions of ourselves in multidimensional aspects. So when you go, do I go and chant? Or, do I actually affirm that is already done? When you say yes to that, you're pulling down that reality into your life right now. And you're just saying, this is my trajectory. That's you going into creation, right? You know this. And so what generally happens, though, is there's this little spark of that, something like some sort of inspiration comes in someone's mind. I'm going to get a new house or a condo or whatever. And within microseconds, the program, like a computer, the program goes zig, 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 and looks at all the information that it's got from the past of whether this is appropriate, whether this is a possibility, whether this is safe, whether you're going to survive it or not. And it quickly links it to another behavior at a different time, another memory, another event. And through that link, it then comes into the feeling of not good enough, not worthy, I don't belong, whatever your version of that is. And you second guess it. You go into self-doubt and you listen to that voice instead of the voice that says, hey, you've got the ability to create magic, to create miracles, to be with your higher self, to be in wisdom, and to be in the unknown, which scares the crap out of the unconscious because the unknown is not safe.
Right.
And so it just this cycle of listening to that voice instead of this one. And unfortunately, on top of that, that unconscious has got past lives, generational history. It's heavy. It's so heavy. So we are full of this gunk. I often share with my clients or anyone that's listening, that movie, The Labyrinth, with David Bowie.
Yeah.
So, so Sarah is out there, crusading to find her brother Toby, right? And she's so close to getting to the Goblin City and to discovering and bringing him back and rescuing him. And the Goblin King goes, you've had friends helping you, you've got people there that are supporting you. I'm going to push you back. And so he puts her into her bedroom again, or what looks like her bedroom, and she has amnesia. And she's totally like, wasn't I doing something? Where was I? I've got this vague feeling that there's some mission I was on, but I don't know what it is. And she's in her own space and she's going to figure it out. Well, in comes this lady, old bag lady, right? And she's got all this stuff on her. You can see that she's got 4 or 5 different cardigans on and all the things, ratty hair. And she comes in and she's like, oh, look, here's your teddy. You remember your teddy, don't you? And throws it on Sarah, oh, remember this book? And next thing you see her piling all of this stuff and you recognize that that's what happened to her. The weight of the memories and the events that she's carrying on her shoulders, on her back. And now she's trying to do it to Sarah so that Sarah forgets and stays in the past. Luckily, Sarah goes, that's right. And she remembers her quest and off she goes and she saves her little brother Toby, right? But that's us. We've got this weight of childhood memories and past lives and anything from burdens and traumas and decisions from generations that have passed And it's lifting that weight. It's recognizing that that is not who you are. Getting, you can do mindset work if you want to. That takes a long time. You can,
Mm.
I personally, healing is some form of healing. Dr. Joe Dispenza, I do a process called recoding, right? Clearing the codes from the origin of where it came from in the superconscious, in the field, so that it's no longer there. It's like switching off a cancer cell. It's
Mm.
neutralizing it. And, people say the first thing they experience is, oh, I feel much lighter, because that weight of our past is not burdening us anymore. And our spirit and
Mm.
our soul now has the ability to shine the light that we wanted to experience ourselves as, without that stuff carrying it, holding us down, tethering us to the earth.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Um, because I think one of the things that I hear is, well, first of all, as we're going through the process of being raised, like you say, from 0 to 3, we're sponges. We can't help but absorb every single thing that's going on in the environment.
Mm.
And as we get older, we start to hear things and pick and choose. I don't know if you're familiar with landmark education.
I've done the first one. I haven't done any more, but I've got friends that have. Yeah.
So in the forum, what they talk about is from, 0 to 7, you're making a decision that you're not something enough. And then from 7 to tweens, you're making a decision that you're not something, something. And then from, your teenage years, it's another. And these three choices basically, that's like the efficiency program that your brain runs things through and says, I'm not smart enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not whatever. And it becomes the limitation to the palette that you use to create your life with.
Mm,
And the challenge is, it's not just your limitation that you're dealing with, because when you throw in the idea of generational trauma, when you fold in the idea that my mother makes her fears my fears, and her mother made her fears my mother's fears, and it goes back and shit rolls downhill, as they say.
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of like, one of the things that we talk about is like, where did the problem start? How, like, who am I supposed to blame? How am I supposed to really, like, who do I need to kill for this? Like, why am I dealing with this shit? And at the end of the day, none of that really matters, because you bought into the program. I bought into the program, and I'm the one who still keeps the tape playing.
Mm,
Yeah, and it's getting to the source of that and understanding, because it's so challenging to believe that I have the power and the ability to just decide that I don't want to be that anymore. And
mm.
it's obviously not quite that easy, because there's a little bit of work in retraining. Um, but yeah, I love, it's almost like having access to the cheat codes to go in and rewrite the entire story. But then the question is, how do you know who you really authentically are if you can be anybody?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because when we can be anyone, we can be anyone. We are an expression of the whole. And
Mm.
just going into some of the things that you're talking about, when you start going, well, who is to blame? How did I get myself into this shit? That's when you start having, like, if you're really asking the question, is that's when you have to go into the space of elevating into, well, I'm a soul, a spirit that came down to have a physical experience. There's more to me than just this physical body. And when you do that, time goes from a lifetime where you're just in one lifetime to
Mm.
an evolutionary process of human beings discovering themselves and moving into more and more, and looking at the generations and how we've moved from total limitation, total separation to, you got to see that we've been evolving into something more, right? And that there's something that we're all moving towards. We're moving towards enlightenment. We're moving into awareness that we're not the only ones that are here, like we're moving into consciousness, and that we have the ability to become a whole and to not fight each other because we're fighting ourselves, and all of those things, like that awareness. And so when you move into that, you realize that you've been painting in black and white for a very long time, and that you've got a palette of color. And now you can go, well, which part of the palette am I going to choose first? Because I've got access to all the colors. But if I mix all the colors and I decide I want it all now, then it turns into mud and it turns into this yucky gray color. But if I pick and choose and I go, I want purple right now, and what does it look like if I put in a little bit of white or a bit of, yellow? Knowing that that doesn't mean that when I want to, I can change and go to red if I want to. Like, just knowing that you've got the whole palette in front of you and we've got time. Like, be whoever you want to be right now, and express that through however you want to express it. The challenge with that is recognizing that you're doing that from your own authority and not being influenced by the environment around you, which has worked out that actually we can influence people as well to be whoever they want to be. And so people think that they're being expressive and being themselves, but actually, are they, or are they being dictated to by their unconscious and programmed by the environment around them that's saying, this is what you want? I talk to people all the
Mm.
time and say, here you are thinking you want to be healthy and to lose weight and everything. And you go to the local petrol station and here's this big billboard in front of you that says, two Mars bars for the price of one, right? And all of a sudden, with your freedom, you think that you've got freedom. You're getting two Mars bars and you've totally forgotten what your mission was in the first place. So it's being able to, it's a journey. It's a continuous journey of stripping away that influence from others, recognizing ourselves as a creator, choosing to express what we want to express right now, looking at, reflecting, am I expressing from my own sovereignty, or am I being influenced still? Am I giving my power away, or have I got it? Am I empowered, And
Mm.
each moment is like, oh, tweak it here, tweak it there. Like, it's just a continuous journey. We never finish, and we never, you know, it just never ends.
That's true. And I think one of the things, well, first of all, they always put the sale of my most favorite coping mechanisms the minute I decide I'm no longer going to do that. Publix has carrot cake on sale right now, and it's horrible. Anyway, but it's also one of the things that you're pointing to is the reaction, like that visceral,
Mm.
emotional lower three chakras. I just can't help myself. I'm turning the car toward the gas station right now because I know that whatever it is on sale. And the question that I begin to ask myself is, where am I coming from? Am I coming from fear, or am I coming from love? One of my go-to quotes is Einstein said that one of the most important choices you can ever make is whether you believe that the universe is a friendly place or not.
Mm.
And if I believe that the universe is a friendly place, then it doesn't matter what's going on outside of me. I know from the 50 plus years that I have been on this planet that it's always worked out so far. It might have been an interesting ride along the way, but I also, when I let myself sit in wonder, look at it and go, I just can't believe that all of this came together in this particular way to put me here. Because I know, and this is really um one of the biggest things to overcome is to be grateful for the trauma or for the struggle, because it makes you who you are. And when I can finally acknowledge that if it weren't for that experience when I was young, or that experience at work, or that experience in that relationship, that I might not have learned. Like, your first relationship with the guy that, he was helping you basically just hide from life for 10 years. It was perfectly designed for where you were at that moment. And then when you can wake up from that and see, not only is it something that I don't prefer, but it's also something that really served me, because I wouldn't have realized I didn't prefer it if I hadn't lived it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you can see the treasure in everything, every moment, every experience, you know, you know, I mean, we could go on forever about all of this, couldn't we? Like I have moments of, like other things that have had, like 4.5 centimeter brain tumor. It was such an amazing experience for me. Like I've had so many what people would call traumas that have just served as an enlightening moment, because I've taken them on. I've recognized that they're there for me to learn from. I've experienced them full heartedly. I've recognized when I was going into victim, or when I was giving my power away to the situation, regardless of what it is. And it's given me the opportunity to move into recognizing myself as a higher being, a powerful woman,
Mm.
an enlightened soul, and choosing differently, as you said, and watching the miracle just unfold. Because I go into, isn't this a fucking amazing place? Like, isn't it like, I have these things. I said, this happened to me. I had 3 shooting stars when I was questioning whether I was doing the right thing or not,
Mm.
and I still am in awe of that. Like, you can go in and go, well, I was at that right time. Like, the science behind it is that those shooting stars were bloody falling anyway, right? Like, it
In
was there
theory,
in
yes.
theory,
Yeah.
right? So, in theory, when you're going into the physical, I happen to be there at the right time to be and ask that question at exactly the right time.
Mhm.
10 minutes before I've been there for 10 minutes, a
Mm.
stars full. I was in a place where there was no lights, and I was questioning life, and am I a witch? Because that was part, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I working for God, or who am I working for? This is freaking me out, all the things that were happening. And I'm like, I want to sign. And at the time, my name was Liz. I called myself Liz. And I knew a differentiator, because my spirit, whoever, would call me Elizabeth. And it was like, you're doing the right thing, Elizabeth. And I slammed my hand on the car and went, God damn it, I want to sign like in the movies, or I'm not going any further. I was like determined, like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And straight away, 3 shooting stars, like nothing for 5 minutes afterwards, like, It's
Wow.
just amazing to be in awe of the fact that we are creating all of it, that this is our world, that this is our playground, and that we have the ability to create miracles and to govern how we're going to experience it, even
Hmm.
in times when the world's chaotic or decisions are being made from a world point of view that we don't want or whatever. How am I going to respond? How am I going to behave? Who am I going to influence as my life? Like, what vibration am I choosing?
Yeah.
And you have the ability to choose whatever vibration you want to.
One thing I'd like to circle back to, like, we're coming to the end of an hour, but this is such an extraordinary conversation. There's one thing I want to pick up on before we wrap up, because I don't want someone to walk away thinking, because there are some people who would say, oh, but that just makes you think that you believe that you're God. And so I love the way you framed it, that you asked for a sign. And if you had asked the question 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, it would have been a different experience, but you didn't.
Mm.
It's not like the stars fell in that moment. They had been traveling for light years,
Yeah.
and it was the perfect confluence of events and experiences. There is an intelligence, whether you call it God or you call it the universe or you call it Buddha nature, you call it whatever you want to call it. I think that I personally am of the belief that we're all talking about the same shit. We just call it different things because culturally we've come from different places. But
Mm.
we're all trying to explain an experience that's inexpressible through language. And so it's not like I just go, I demand a Mars bar, and it just poof pops up on the table.
Yeah.
Because again, there's no investment in that. And I think that it's a beautiful balance between, okay, great, you say you want it, the waiter is gone to let the chef know it's being prepared, and if you doubt it, we're going to test your faith and make sure that you really, 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 really believe it's coming. And it's like in the Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich, when the guy, he shares the story about 3 feet from gold. The guy buys all this mining equipment. He spends all of this time digging and digging and digging. He just gets so fed up. He gives up. He sells all the equipment to some dude in the next town over. And the guy pays whatever sort of a geologist it is that would be able to trace the veins, and realizes the man was like 3 feet away from hitting the mother lode. So, you know, yes, those stars were falling anyway. Yeah, sure, you can call me an idiot for wanting to believe that, my journaling or my tarot or my chanting or whatever works. But I'm going to ask you, how's your life going?
Mm. Mm.
Are you willing to look at how your life is going and how you are contributing to it? Because, again, circling back to the poker example, we're all dealt the same number of cards. We all have the same opportunity. You can argue that his hand was better than yours, or her hand was better than yours, or that the dealer is crooked. Like, you can argue all of those things, but at the end of the day, a very good friend of mine says, out of all of the people who were working at McDonald's at that one point in time, only one of them ended up owning 10 McDonald's 15 years
Mm.
later. So everybody starts with the same, well, it could be argued, we are all dealt a hand, and then
Mm.
we get to decide what we do with that hand. Some of us might need to work a little bit harder, but we never really, really understand truly what our karmic trajectory is. We don't know what was in our past. We don't know what's in our future. And unless you're willing to really do the work of taking a look and seeing, okay, every time I eat carrot cake, I feel depressed. Every time I smoke a cigarette, I'm coughing up a lung. Every time I come home and slam the door, I'm getting into a fight with my partner. If you're not willing to take a look at how you're contributing to that situation, then you're basically just on a giant tilt-a-whirl getting sick and like never getting any better. If you're happy with that kind of a ride, great. Like you should have stopped watching the video quite a while ago. You're probably not the person who's watching right now. But if you're really interested in shifting the context of your life and seeing what's possible, or just proving that we're both batshit crazy, try it. See what there is to see and prove or disprove for yourself. I mean, coming from an absolute skeptic who you couldn't convince me there's not magic now, and I still doubt every so often, probably more often than not, but it's part of my charm. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because it's so people took The Secret so out of context.
Mm.
Like they made so many people wrong on so many levels, and rather than just going to the gym and seeing if it works, you just, complain about the people who are working out making you look bad.
Mm. It's
So,
yeah, no, I agree. And that's, the whole thing with the God thing, right? Like that's the dichotomy of life, right? Is like I didn't make these beautiful plants that I've got hanging around, like I'm not the creator, and yet we have the ability to experience ourselves as creators, right? And so this is the I'm the all and I'm the separation at the same time. And so
yeah,
um
creator with a little c.
yes, creator with a little c. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, it's all the things that you were just saying is so true. It's um we we have the ability, but if your life's not working the way you want it to, then know that it's just that little shift, that little moment where you go, can I just have a better thought? Can I just experience something a little different? Can I just distract myself from the ugliness that I have been saying to myself or whatever? What can I do to get my vibration to raise a little bit more and to feel relief? And that's how it starts, right?
Yeah. Read a different book, watch a different
Mm,
movie,
mm.
talk to a different friend, take a bubble bath. Don't talk to a friend. Just be alone for a little while.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
unplug in whatever way. What I like that. Searching for just a little bit more relief.
Mm,
If a cup of tea before bed is going to help you, no,
yeah.
make a bubble bath. Like do something to care for yourself because we're all struggling with something on some level.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Even those of us who look like we're happy all the time.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, we've got our own. Everything's the evolution of it, isn't it? Hey.
True.
Mm.
Well, Elizabeth, like it has been an extraordinary conversation. One thing that I ask my guests is before we wrap up, is there a thought that you would like to leave the audience with, whether it's something we've already talked about that you want to reinforce or something you think would be valuable for them to hear?
Really, just what we were just saying, that if you find yourself, if any of this resonated to you, the conversation, this has been a beautiful conversation. If any of it has resonated to you, then your soul brought you here right now in this place to hear this information. And I would be saying, listen to your soul and ask, what do I do with this information now? What's my next step? What's some inspired action that I can take to move me and evolve me into whatever I'm creating, whatever I'm becoming, and listen and take action on that.
Beautifully said. Well, it has been just so much fun having this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Oh, it was so good. All meant to be, right? Orchestrated by the universe.
Of course, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we continue to connect.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure we will. Yeah. Thanks so much, Erin. It was great.
Very welcome. And to you, the listener or viewer, thank you so much for joining us for another episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time.